I still remember like it was yesterday. Our eyes met, and I realized that she and I were simply two sides of the same story. You see, she had just come from the States a few days earlier, and I realized that she was full of optimism and hope for the future. She wanted what everybody else wants: peace, stability, and a chance to carve out a little bit of the world to make it her own. Now, on the outside, it looked as if she was pre signing a simple lease agreement. But in reality, she was taking a leadership role to set her dreams in motion. Little did she know, she was setting my dreams in motion as well. Well, that's because my dream has always been to help lots of people, help them achieve their greatest goals, and leave the world just a little bit better than I found it. Just so you know, that's an excerpt from my future Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech one day. In all seriousness, though, this has started out as a journey in property investment, but in the end, it has turned out to be so much more than that. It has led me on a journey for leadership discernment and really understanding what it means to lead, influence, and how to get what you want in life. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I'm definitely still on this journey, but I have learned a few things along the way. And I don't know about you, but when I think about leadership, the concept, it feels esoteric, kind of hard to nail down, and it always feels just beyond my reach. And I think that's because when I think about what it means to be a good leader, I'm talking like a really good leader, like a great leader, like the people that are featured on the inside of the glossy pages of magazines, those people, they don't just change our short-term behavior. No, they influence us to change our full perspectives on the world. That's the kind of leader I want to be. Now, again, I am certainly still along this journey, but I've learned a few things along the way, and ironically, none of them require you to be in a formal position of authority. So today, I'm going to share with you how you too can cultivate a culture of leadership while remaining hyper-cognizant of the long-term impact of the work that you do. Now, getting back to the story. Remember, she was pre-signing this lease agreement, and not only did it get her dreams in motion, but it started mine in motion as well. And that's because I was very interested in helping solve housing affordability. You know, our society has these intangible lines of things like socioeconomic status, class, and race, icky terms like that. And even though my background is in the hard sciences, I wanted to do something about it, something that felt meaningful, something that felt tangible, something that felt real, like real estate. I'm going to do stand-up comedy one day. But in all seriousness, when we look at how we can really change the world, it all came down to this moment. You see, she and I were perched on two plastic folding chairs inside what was my largest property investment to date. This was one apartment amongst many inside a totally vacant, abandoned apartment complex. And I just wasn't sure if it was going to work out. You know, either it was going to validate the idea or it was going to prove that the problem was simply too big to solve. If it was going to work, however, the property was going to need to do two things really, really well. First, it was going to have strong financials, which in the investment world, we call a strong net operating income. At the same time, it was going to need to deliver very healthy, pragmatic property improvements so that the residents, it would stay top of mind about the long-term impact of the work that we do. I'm very pleased to say that this property has gone on to serve as a model that we've implemented in other properties and in other cities at greater scale. And beyond that, it has served as the basis for the boots-on-the-ground feedback that has really influenced my leadership perspectives today. Now, you know, I really wish I could tell you this property was rare and kind of a one-off instance, but the truth is, it is not. Properties like this are very commonplace, particularly in urban cities around our country. And to make matters worse, persons that live in these locations tend to be of lower income, and while they want quality housing, it often is just beyond their financial reach. Now, you may already be aware, but persons that spend more than 30% of their income towards housing are what we call cost burdened. And Harvard did a study in 2016, and they found out that over 38 million American families fall into this category. That's a big number, and a lot of people. And I wish I could tell you that change happens overnight, but the truth is, it does not. And after over 7 years of working to remove blight and provide quality housing in these neighborhoods, I have learned a few things. about activating stakeholders and really trying to get people towards a new and shared vision. And one of the things is that you can take a solution and take it from the idea phase and implement it into something that others can endorse. The thing about actions that support the greater good is that they create community amongst our shared humanity. I like to think that housing affordability is simply an analog for a lot of the other systemic problems facing our society today. Problems like these affect everyone to a certain degree, but those on the front lines are particularly affected. And for whatever reason, it's like we feel that they are somehow less deserving of the prosperity that the rest of us benefit. But it doesn't have to be that way. In our case, we developed a symbiotic model where both residents and investors benefit from the shared growth. Residents receive positive investments and improved housing, and investors receive positive returns on their investment. Now, I mentioned that there are lots of cities and towns around the country that fall into this category. To be very specific, this is the urban core of urban cities, as well as rural towns that are often past their heyday. They're written off as less valuable in places where nobody really cares. But I'll tell you a secret. They're places where people want to live, where people want to work, and where people want to play. They're only undervalued because we've collectively decided that they're somehow less valuable than that bustling city center of an urban metropolis. So again, what we've done is we strategically showcase the benefit of investing in these neighborhoods and then showcase them to investors. Investors that believe in the vision, then invest for a shared benefit and improvement in the community. Properties that were previous eyesores now become vibrant housing for the residents, and investors receive above average returns. Properties within our network not only deliver a strong net operating income for the investors, but also a net operating influence in the local communities in which we work. So here's the point. If you have a very clear vision for the future that you want to manifest, but you don't have control over all the individual people or places or the moving parts, then the key is to lead by influence. So, I've summarized my thoughts on how to effectively lead, regardless of the situation or circumstance, into the test method. Now I know what you're thinking. A scientist with a test method, I know. So sue me, I just couldn't resist. But I'll tell you the truth. The test method for leadership is incredibly effective regardless of your industry. So let's get started. The first T in TEST stands for trust. Both the leader and the idea must inspire credibility. Without it, you can't even get started. People have to have a reason to believe in you. And without it, it's going to make it very difficult for people to rationalize why they should endorse your ideas. On the real estate side, we did this by really trying to quantify the triple bottom line returns that investors would receive. That's the financial, social, and environmental impacts. And the organizations we work with value this as well. Their staff members really appreciate having real hardcore credibility and value in anything that they endorse. You know, when we talk about leadership, there's a recent study that found that workers are 14 times more likely to be engaged if they trust their leader. And I believe that to be true. But that trust is built on an idea that the leader can get the job done. It's the foundational step. So the T in the test method begins with trust because that's the foundation. Now the E in test stands for elasticity, and that's having an elastic mindset. It's really about flexibility. As leaders, our job is to set that clear vision, but it's very helpful if we're loose in the how and the implementation thereof. Resign ourselves to the iterative process and allow the how to reveal itself over time. It's really beneficial in today's environment. And we found this out to be the case on the real estate side as well. You know, we started out working on one property at a time, but quickly realized that that was just not enough to actually build momentum and change communities. So we edited our model to acquire lots of properties in a concentrated area to gain momentum at greater scale. Let me tell you, there was a lot of pushback. In the real estate space, there's something known as gentrification. This is a term used to describe what happens to existing residents when new persons move into the neighborhood that often have higher amounts of disposable income. Oftentimes, those new residents, they will purchase properties, renovate them, and sell them quickly at a profit. The problem occurs when those properties are sold, it increases the property values and the property taxes associated. Those original residents may not be able to afford those new property taxes, and so they're either forced to move or sell their homes. This is a situation where a rising tide doesn't always lift all boats. But thankfully, this is not the model that we implemented. Instead, we did a purchase, renovate to rent model. In this case, both residents, old and new, get to benefit from the new vibrancy in the communities. People are not displaced, and people's lives can progress. It's a beautiful thing. This shared environment is incredibly effective, and it's what elasticity is all about. And in today's COVID-19 environment, having some flexibility in the how that our goals and our visions are accomplished is incredibly important. There was a recent study that found that globally, over 80% of workers today are just coming to work. Yeah, everybody, right? So having a little bit of grace and flexibility and elasticity in the how that our visions are implemented really can go a long way. So remember, the E in test method stands for elastic. Now the S in the test method stands for a shift in mindset. This is the first portion where we introduce a feedback mechanism into the method. It's how you know that you're on the right path. I like to think about this as when people start sharing your ideas without you being the catalyst, that's how you know that you're on the right path. This is even more important on the corporate setting because once people start sharing and talking about your ideas, then you know that you're really hitting the mark. So the S in test method stands for that shift in mindset. On the real estate side, this happened in the beginning, it was very, very slow. And we went for years being undercapitalized and raising money from friends and family. And then slowly, very slowly, extremely slowly, if I'm honest, people started to gain traction and kind of get on board with our ideas. And they started to reach out and try to understand how they could invest and participate in our projects. That flywheel mechanism was the confirmation we needed to keep going forward. So when you recognize that people are sharing your ideas without you, you're on the right path. So remember, the S in test stands for shift in mindset. Now that final T in the test method stands for team, which is having a team-oriented and collaborative mindset. Ultimately, when I think about leadership, remember, I go back to the thoughts of those leaders that are featured in the glossy pages of those major magazines. I love that idea, but today that messaging is falling flat. As our workforces become increasingly younger and diverse, they don't resonate as much with this individualistic me approach. Instead, having a much more collaborative and open environment when it comes to leadership is really what matters. Individual contributors want to know that their impact and their work is valuable and appreciated. It's about sharing the stage. I can tell you that I may be the one here on stage, but I'm not the one who works the hardest or the one who puts it all together. I'm reminded of a quote from the late, great Colin Powell, where he says, "If you want to go far, don't care who gets the credit." Even more so, there was a recent study that found that a member of a team is 2.5 times more likely to be engaged, and I agree with that. In today's environment, we really have to rechange the narrative of what leadership means and include more persons in the glossy pages of those magazines. So remember, the final T in test method stands for team. So that's it. That's the test method for leadership, and I think you'll find it very helpful regardless of the industry that you're in. Because again, as we think about our increasingly diverse work environments and how the economics of business are changing, we can't just focus on the net operating income and whether our business is just in the red or in the black. Instead, we have to think about who are the people that we leave in the wake of our ambition? And how does this manifest into the actual business that we do every day? Stakeholders, financiers, They want to know what is the holistic impact of our work, and that is quantified by the net operating income of the things we do every day. So if you want to make progress by default, then I encourage you to think of that long tail benefit and work towards creating a net operating income that everyone can be proud of. Thank you.